He had done so much for the contribution to First Nations.
Tonight, more reaction from First Nation and Métis leaders in the wake of the Prime Minister's resignation.
I think he's quite heartbroken.
Next steps for Yukon hockey star Gavin McKenna after a disappointing exit for Team Canada at the World Juniors.
We knew we wanted to tell a story that felt really real to us about the Arctic and life in the Arctic.
And an exciting new series based on life in the Canadian Arctic is set to premiere on APTN. Good evening, I'm Savannah Kelly. Welcome to APTN National News. Indigenous leadership in Manitoba is reacting to Justin Trudeau's resignation as Prime Minister. And as Sierra Bettens reports, they're calling on all federal party leaders to prioritize reconciliation. Here's more.
In his 29 years as president of the Manitoba Métis Federation, David Chartrand has met with many prime ministers. But when it came to supporting Red River Métis, Chartrand says Justin Trudeau exceeded the rest.
The reconciliation strategy is good for Canada, it's good for Indigenous people, and it's good for the future. So without doubt, I think Trudeau has proven that through the reconciliation model.
On Monday, Trudeau resigned from his post as Prime Minister of Canada. In a Tuesday interview with APTN, Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, Acting Grand Chief Betsy Kennedy, commended Trudeau for his commitments to reconciliation.
He had done so much for the contribution to First Nations, establishing the missing and murdered women file and the call to justice.
At the same time, she says the Trudeau government failed to deliver on some priorities for First Nations, including outstanding land claims.
Especially our treaty and our treaty lands. We've been trying to do that for over 20 years, and that still has not been done. And the infrastructure, especially our water, many of our First Nations are still under water advisory.
Chartrand says advancing self-government for the Red River Métis and supporting the MMF's first-time home purchase program are among Trudeau's major achievements, as the torch is passed on to a new Liberal leader and potentially a new Prime Minister. Kennedy and Chartrand hope Canada's next leader stays committed to change.
I hope that reconciliation is still in the forefront, no matter what party's in play. I think it's proven itself that it is very successful. It's changed, as I said, tens of thousands of people's lives, Indigenous people, and that it shows that if you include the Indigenous people in the beginning, that there's less controversy, there's less fighting, there's less court cases that need to go on.
For now, Parliament has been prorogued until March 24th, and Trudeau will remain the leader of the Federal Liberal Party until a replacement is chosen. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
More reaction out of BC today as leaders are addressing the resignation of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. APTN's Tina House has this story.
That I cannot be the one to carry the Liberal standard into the next election.
Just one day after the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, announced his resignation, Premier of British Columbia David Eby held a press conference in Vancouver.
I'd like to just open by thanking Prime Minister Trudeau for his service to Canada over his time as Prime Minister. Without doubt, there were moments of frustration that I'm sure went in both directions. But we got some big things done together. Childcare, he got the country through a global pandemic. And there's a big shift for him and for his family. I want to wish them luck with their next steps.
However, Grand Chief Stuart Phillip had his own thoughts on his sudden resignation.
I don't think there's any question that it was long overdue. I thought the Prime Minister was characteristically not thinking of the best interests of Canada. Rather, he was catering to his own narcissistic self-absorbed self and waited until the last minute. His legacy with our people is very, very tragic. He, in spite of his promises in 2015 that he was going to address the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and provide resources, that never happened.
Grand Chief also points to the crisis of many First Nations who still do not have clean drinking water and says that sadly with Trudeau pro-Rogan government, it will kill the bill that would have ensured clean drinking water for First Nations across Canada. Philip also says his legacy will also include the mistreatment of women.
I have no respect for the Prime Minister given his commitment to being a champion of women's rights when he first was elected in 2015. When I think of how horribly he treated Jody Wilson-Raybould, that challenged him over the unethical, underhanded situation with NC Lavalin.
And with Trudeau stepping down, we asked Premier Eby if this will affect their plan to advance reconciliation.
I do certainly recognize that there are going to be some impacts on our initiatives in relation to our partnership with Indigenous people in the province as a result of the resignation of the Prime Minister, but my hope is that that work will be able to continue regardless of who is sitting in the chair of Prime Minister, and just to make sure that we're doing that critically important work.
I've been quite public about encouraging our people, particularly women, to run for public office. We need to populate those, legislative centers of decision-making if we hope to change our world.
Parliament will be called back in session in March. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Yesterday, Justin Trudeau announced he will step down as leader of the Liberal Party. With it searching for a new leader and Canada preparing for a possible spring federal election, the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations says the next leader must prioritize First Nations issues. Yesterday, the FSIN urged possible leadership candidates to acknowledge their responsibility to First Nations. This includes taking action on issues affecting inherent and treaty rights, child welfare, economic development, language and cultural preservation, MMIWG, and 2S LGBTQI++. The FSIN called for a leader capable of delivering on the promises of reconciliation. FSIN Chief Bobby Cameron said in a press release, reconciliation is not a one-time initiative, but a continuous process. He also stated that inherent and treaty rights implementation and protection remain the FSIN's top priorities. Megan Gallagher was last seen alive in 2020 in Saskatoon. Her body was found 2 years later near St. Louis, Saskatchewan. After 22 months of waiting for evidence copies, 2 of the accused in her case have now begun their trial. Yesterday marked the start of a long trial for Cheyenne Petitus and Summer Sky Henry. Both women are on trial at Court of King's Bench in Saskatoon for first-degree murder in connection with Gallagher's death. Both have pled not guilty. Petitus and Henry are among 9 people facing various charges in connection with this case. Justice Richard Daniluk called the 22-month wait for this trial ridiculous and warned the Crown and defense lawyers to be better prepared to avoid unconstitutional delays. The trial is set for 39 days. A publication ban now prevents reporting on any evidence from the trial. A 17-year-old was fatally wounded in an incident in downtown Whitehorse on New Year's Day. The teen's identity is protected under a publication ban. Whitehorse RCMPs say they responded to a residence at Main Street and 7th Avenue where they located the teen who had been grievously injured. 19-year-old Jackie Rudick has been charged with second-degree murder and unauthorized possession of a firearm. His next court date is Tuesday, January 7th. Nain RCMP are asking for the public's help to find a missing Inuk woman. Elizabeth Jararius is a 51-year-old and was wearing a blue Canada Goose winter coat and black boots when she was last seen on Christmas Eve in Nain, Labrador. Nain is the northernmost community on the Labrador coast, 369 kilometers northeast of Happy Valley Goose Bay, and is only accessible by air or sea. Nain Ground Search and Rescue is searching and is asking people to investigate their property, sheds, crawl spaces, and yards. Nain RCMP is asking anyone with information on Elizabeth's whereabouts to contact RCMP at 709-922-2862 or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. The chiefs of Ontario and the Anishinaabe Nation, or NAN, say they are negotiating their own final agreement with Canada to reform the First Nations Child and Family Services system. The agreement would only apply to First Nations in Ontario. Sierra Bettens has more.
In 2016, the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal ordered Canada to stop discriminatory practices and reform the First Nations CFS program. In July, the chiefs of Ontario and NAN accepted the final agreement on the long-term reform of the First Nations Child and Family Services program. The program aims to reduce the number of First Nations children in care and help them stay connected to their community, family, and culture. Under that agreement, Canada would have provided $47.8 billion over 10 years to support a national reformed First Nations CFS program. However, that proposal excluded off-reserve First Nation children. Then, in October, a resolution to support the agreement was voted down at a special meeting in Calgary by a majority of the Assembly of First Nations. In a statement, NAN Grand Chief Elvin Fiddler said that while the absence of a national agreement is unfortunate, they're committed to reforming child welfare services for nations in Ontario. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Coming up after the break, a look at Yukon hockey sensation Gavin McKenna, the youngest player to be chosen on Canada's roster for the 2025 World Juniors. Plus, a new comedy series premiering tonight on APTN is giving a taste of Inuit humor and an authentic view of life in the North.
The platform itself felt like unfathomable and just so exciting to think about having that kind of opportunity and that kind of reach for a story from the Arctic.
Welcome back to APTN National News. The World Junior Hockey Championship wrapped up Sunday in Ottawa. All eyes were on Yukon hockey star Gavin McKenna, who many hoped would lead Team Canada to victory. However, it was Team USA that ultimately took home the gold. But as Sarah Connors tells us, there's always hope for next year.
Tired Finns on the ice. Here's McKenna, loose in front. Good stop. Rebound, score!
Yukon hockey sensation Gavin McKenna had high hopes for the 2025 World Juniors. The 17-year-old Chandakwichan citizen from Whitehorse was the youngest player chosen to play on Team Canada's roster. But the goal McKenna scored in his first game against Finland would be his last. Eventually, Team Canada fell 4-3 to Czechia in the quarterfinals.
I wish we could have did more for the fans and the people of Canada. It sucks we had to go out this way.
Perhaps the defeat was even more punishing as the championship was held in the nation's capital. This also marks the second straight year Canada has been eliminated in the quarterfinals.
I hate to say it, but there's always next year, so I wish we could have got it done this year, but I don't know. Gotta look at the positives, I guess.
I think he's quite heartbroken. All the boys are completely heartbroken. That's not what anybody wanted.
McKenna's parents say it was a disappointing defeat, but they're overjoyed at their son's incredible accomplishments.
For him to be able to go out there and be such a force every single shift that he was on the ice, and to earn the more ice time and all that kind of stuff, yeah, he made us so proud.
They're hopeful their son's experience at the World Juniors will ultimately benefit him in the long run.
I think he'll come off of this tournament and probably be a better hockey player. I think he's going to be driven. He's probably going to be, he's going to want to prove himself even more. And, for this season, it's for his WHL team, the Medicine Hat Tigers, to win a championship and ultimately go to the Memorial Cup.
McKenna is one of 9 players eligible to return to Team Canada next year. The 2026 World Juniors will take place in St. Paul, Minnesota. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
A new comedy series by Inuit producers Stacey Agluk McDonald and Alethea Anakuk-Barrell premieres on CBC and APTN this Tuesday. Shot on-site in Nunavut, north of North, tells the story of a young Inuk mother who reinvents herself after a life-changing event. Sierra Bettens has more.
Siaya. When people ask where I'm from, I say think of the furthest place north you've ever been. Now keep going.
When the cast of North landed in Iqaluit last January, they received a chilling greeting.
The day they came in was like minus 52 or something. It was frigid. It was so
aggressively cold.
It was so cold. It hurt your skin in seconds. The look on their faces when they walked into the airport, they were,
what have I gotten myself into?
On Tuesday, audiences across Canada can experience a taste of life in the Arctic with the premiere of North, written and produced by Stacey Agluk McDonald and Alethea Anakuk-Barrell. The television series is a partnership between CBC, APTN, and Netflix.
We knew we wanted to tell a story that felt really real to us about the Arctic and life in the Arctic in Nunavut specifically, and that meant that we wanted something that felt more joyful, colorful, and complicated, but wonderfully so.
The show follows Siaya, a 26-year-old Inuk mother. She lives in the fictional Arctic town, Ice Cove, where everyone knows everyone's business. After spontaneously exiting a marriage, she looks to reinvent herself while navigating motherhood, her job, and newfound independence. Siaya is played by Anna Lombi, whose acting credits include True Detective and Trickster.
I grew up in Iqaluit, which is where we shot North, and I grew up seeing, so many versions of Siaya and loving so many versions of Siaya and being inspired by them, and in many ways related to her so deeply. I think being passionate and ambitious and driven.
Agluk McDonald's love for comedy took flight on the set of APTN's Inuktitut language series, Kanugli. She says the genre was a perfect fit for North.
It's not one-dimensional. You could do a lot with it, including being heartfelt, including being emotional, including even shedding a tear or two or more. Those are my favorite types of comedies, the ones that have depth to them. And that's certainly what North of North is. I think it's comedy with a real heart and soul.
North of North features a cast of both Inuit and non-Inuit actors.
Lots of small roles that are filled by Inuit in our community, background actors. It's just like a huge wealth of different types of characters on our show.
With 3 networks on board and a reach of 190 countries by the spring, the producers say it's a dream come true.
The platform itself felt like unfathomable and just so exciting to think about having that kind of opportunity and that kind of reach for a story from the Arctic.
They're excited for audiences to get a taste of Inuit humor and a more authentic view of life in the North.
More recently, Indigenous comedy shows that are breaking through, that's becoming more common now, but when we were starting to develop this show, didn't exist yet. And so we're really excited to be contributing to that brand of Native humor.
North of North premieres on CBC and APTN on January 7th and launches globally on Netflix in the spring. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Coming up after the break, a preview of tonight's all-new episode of Face to Face with AFN National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Niepenak. Stick around. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Greg Scriver wanted to share this view of the ice formations along the Ottawa River under an amazing pink, red, and orange reflection from the overhead storm clouds. Thanks for sharing that one, Greg. For a chance to be our next photo of the day, send your photos to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting over on the east coast, -2 for Halifax, +2 in St. John's. Kuujjuaq snowy and 1 degree, and Nukjuak -18. Quebec City snowy and -6, Gaspé +1. London snowy and -6, North Bay -14. Timmins, snowy, -21. Kapuskasing, sunshine, -21 as well. Churchill, snowy and -15. Norway House, -9. Winnipeg, snowy and -8. Barons River, -10. Yorkton, -1. Mix of sun and cloud. Saskatoon, snowy and 1 degree. Stony Rapids, snowy, -4. Buffalo Narrows, -6. Sunshine and -10 for high level. Peace River, +1. Calgary, +6 there. Edmonton, +2. Mix of sun and cloud. Tofino, rainy and 9 degrees. Canal, -1. Prince George, mostly sunny, 2 degrees there. Smithers, 0 degrees. Watson Lake, sunny and -18. Mayo, -11. Wati, snowy and -12 there. Wrigley, -19. Paulatuck, mostly sunny, -22. Colville Lake, -16. Snowy and -19 for Baker Lake. Chesterfield, -18. Clyde River, sunshine and -30. Iqaluit, -12 and snow. Coming up after this newscast is the first face-to-face episode of 2025. National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepinak stopped by to talk with guest host T.R. Wheatley. Here's a preview of that interview.
We'll continue to call for an inquiry into police brutality, police killings. I want to stand with all those mothers and families that have lost loved ones. The MMIWG, I know that there's a lot of work that's unfinished there, as well as economic reconciliation. What does that mean in this country, and how do we bring people together, Canadians together with First Nations, and what does that look like? I think another thing as a mother and as a woman from a First Nation community, one thing that also strikes a chord, I think, with all of us is the membership of First Nations and how we're always questioned about that.
You can catch the entire interview with APTN National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepinak coming up in just a couple of minutes. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News this Tuesday. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'll be back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for your first look at the day's news. I'm Savannah Kelly. Marcy Miigwech, thank you for joining us. Stick around. Face to Face is next. Have a great night.